from the front of the queue, walked along and collected money. And what he did, he went to the florist, because the My Fair Lady opened at Drury Lane Theatre, which is in Covent Garden. So he went to the Covent Garden flower market, bought a box of fresh violets, took them to the stage door so that they could be presented to Julie Andrews from the standees. And we hoped that she might put these in her basket, because in her first scene in My Fair Lady, she is a flower seller, and she's selling violets. Anyway, I don't know if you remember, about a year or a year and a half ago, Julie Andrews published a book called, I think, Home. And it was all about her experience growing up in England as the daughter of two musical stars. Her father and her mother were, I've forgotten their names, but I know they're Andrews, something Andrews, and they appeared in comedy sketches and on the BBC radio. Anyway, she wrote in her book about this, but she said, the last night of the previews, before opening night, I was amazed to walk outside and find all these people lined up waiting to buy gallery tickets. And she said the next day they presented me with this box of violets. So I thought, well, that's wrong, because we were standees. So I wrote a letter to Miss Andrews through her publisher, and I said, you know, I beg to differ with you over your comment that the people waiting in line overnight were for the gallery. I said the gallery had been sold out months ahead. I said, and we were waiting as standees. I said, so I hope you don't mind me correcting you. And I said, no, I was one of those people that gave either my tanner or my bob, which is a slang for a shilling or a sixpence, towards your box of violets. But I never had a reply from her.
Well, maybe
so maybe she'll see this show and she'll get a hint.
She'll have a chance to watch this show 4 times a week, because she lives out here.
Yes, sometimes she does. Yes, in the summer, I know. Yes.
So I'm just, you had seen all these shows in London, but then I guess you had seen these shows in New York also.
Well, of course, I didn't come to New York until 1960. Now, it was in 1958 that I saw My Fair Lady. I came to New York in 1960, and then, of course, I continued. So
how do you compare the productions?
Well, I have to say...
Of course, when you came to New York, you didn't have to look at all the celebrities like you did in London.
Well, I've got a few stories about that, too. I bumped into a few famous people in the New York theatre, too. I once bumped into Ethel Merman, who gave me quite a frown. Because I bumped into her rather hard.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even know she was there. I just bumped into her and said sorry, and she turned around. But anyway, I've forgotten my train of thought now about the British
Comparing
theatre.
the shows?
Oh, yes. The London shows, shows like that needed a lot of dancing, like Oklahoma and Kiss Me Kate. In those days, the male dancers in England were very effeminate, unlike the American dancers, which were very masculine. I mean, I know that a lot of the American dancers, well, not a lot, but a few of them are gay, but they still carry it off as being quite masculine, whereas the English male dancers seem to be rather effeminate. And so when one went to see Oklahoma, you didn't see these big butch, you know, cowboys dancing, you saw little fairies dancing. You know? But it satisfied the British public. So, but that's a big difference between. But I must say that has changed now. The English male dancer seems to have become a lot more masculine. But in those days, they were rather effeminate. And, but that is a big difference as to over here. And of course, being more masculine, they're much more vigorous in their dancing, you know, like in Kiss Me Kate, which calls for a lot of really high jumps and really big production numbers. I found that in London it wasn't as good. But then I can't say about the original here, of course. I've only seen revivals here. But the last revival I saw on Broadway, the male dancers were, as were the female dancers, of course, absolutely superb. But compared to my memory of when I saw them at the Coventry Theatre on tour, you know. But, I also, of course, not only did I see musical theatre, but I saw a lot of classical theatre too. For example, while I was in London, the Old Vic, which was then one of the only theatre companies that produced classic plays like Shakespeare, Shaw, and so on. The Old Vic mounted the entire cycle of Shakespeare's plays. And they did like 6 a year for 5 years. And they had incredible stars in them. I mean, I remember seeing Henry V with Richard Burton. And I remember seeing Othello with Richard Burton. What he did in Othello, he played Othello one night, and then the next he would play Iago, and so on. He alternated every night. And it was incredible to see his performance doing that.
Wow.
And Sir Laurence Olivier and John Gielgud. And I remember John Gielgud and Edith Evans. Edith Evans was quite elderly then. And he was playing Henry VIII, and she was playing either his mother or something, I can't remember a part. But when she came to do her very first number, she froze. And the whole stage stood, you know, frozen. And then someone gave her her feed, and then she continued, and it went on. But I'll never forget that. I think that's the only time I've ever seen a great actor or actress freeze on the stage. Yeah, but she was quite elderly. I mean, she was way up in her 80s then. And so it was understandable. But,
I'm just wondering, did you prepare for this show? I mean, you are just so knowledgeable with all the names of the shows and the people who were in it and everything. I'm wondering whether you studied, you rehearsed to come on.
No, no. Although, having said that, no, I'm particularly not about the theatre aspect, no. I'm preparing a paper which I'm supposed to be presenting at NYU musical department sometime this year, because I had a vast collection of vinyl recordings. Every Broadway show that was ever put on vinyl, I had a copy of it. And then once they deleted the vinyl and started with the CDs, I had every Broadway and off-Broadway show that had been put onto CD. And I decided that since I'm getting older and don't know when anything might happen to me, I didn't want this collection to be wasted. So first of all, I contacted the school in Lincoln Center, and I'm blocking the name now.
You froze.
Yes, I have, yes. Anyway, they don't have a musical department. They have a theatrical department, and they have dancing and classical music, but not a musical comedy department, as it were. Whereas NYU did, and I contacted them, and they said they would be delighted to have it. So I did indeed, last year, donate that entire collection to NYU.
Wow.
so that the future students of, who are writing musicals and so on will have a historical background if they wish to listen to these old recordings that might help them in developing their own writing skills, you know. As I said, I did that rather than have it all broken up and probably, who knows, end up in a yard sale or in a thrift shop or something.
Yeah.
So, and
That's
now,
very rare, those
yes,
vinyls.
now I have the entire collection of London shows, all on vinyl and on CDs. And the London shows, of course, are repeats. Many of them are repeats of the Broadway shows. For example, like South Pacific, Annie Get Your Gun, and so on, but with an English cast, not the American cast.
And do you have like one of those instruments to play it on?
Oh yes, I
you do?
still have a turntable. Yes.
You do.
Yes. And I can play them, but I must confess I don't play them as often as I would like
I
to.
remember those old machines. It was called His Meister's Voice.
His Master's Voice, yes.
I
Yes.
used to have that turntable.
And their symbol, of course, was the big old horn with the old-fashioned crank
Yeah, with a little
box,
dog.
and the arm that had the
Yes.
steel needle. In fact, during the war, that is exactly the type of record player I had. It had belonged to my father. And I used that to play, and all we had were these old musical comedy 78s that my father had bought when he was like 20 in his 1920s, you know, age, and he had collected them. And I had a stack like this. So I used to play stupid little songs like I have never seen a straight banana, and things like that. I mean, they were ridiculous songs because they came from vaudeville, you know.
Well, as you said, Jim, you're going to have to come back and talk about it more because we already used up 30 minutes.
I can't believe it.
Well, I can't believe it either.
But I would be delighted to, and then perhaps I can continue my saga and talk about the Broadway shows.
Bring in some music, and then we could either listen to some or even just look at the picture, what it looks like. I have a whole bunch of 33 albums, and I haven't touched them for years. I wonder if it's still playing.
Well, sure. The albums will play if you have something to play them on. They never deteriorate unless
they could warp.
Oh, they can, yes, they can warp. But having said that, they can still play even if they're warped. They might jump a little bit.
Yeah, because I have a lot of 33 records and with shows. Because every time I went to see a Broadway show, I brought the record.
Oh yes, well that's just what I did, of course.
Yes.
Sometimes I bought the record before the show and learned and got familiar with the score so that I was, you know, familiar with it.
And I have